The story of Palestine is also a story of broken promises, the homeland that was promised but never delivered. Who do you blame for this? You could say Israel is the biggest obstacle to Palestinian statehood. But what about the Islamic world? Palestine was their rallying call. Even rivals like Saudi Arabia and Iran agreed on it. That's no more the case. The Islamic world has its own politics. Palestine is not a mobilizing call anymore. It's a pawn in the race for supremacy. And tonight we want to discuss the politics of the Islamic world, specifically the actions of one country and its power-hungry leader. We're talking about Turkey and its president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. So let me say this first. Erdogan's politics has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with power. His actions are based on convenience, not principles. And we'll explain this by looking at three separate instances. Number one, his response to France's new separatism bill. Now, this is a highly controversial piece of legislation in France. What does it talk about? Curbing hate speech, banning virginity exams and polygamy, regulating Islamic schools, basically creating a new brand of Islam. And this bill was not drafted in a vacuum. It is a direct response to a wave of Islamist attacks in France. It's not a perfect bill, but most polls indicate overwhelming public support for it, and it's a bill. But for Erdogan, this is the end of French democracy. This is what he said on Wednesday, I'm quoting, "The adoption of this law, which is openly in contradiction of human rights, freedom of religion and European values, will be a guillotine blow inflicted on French democracy." Human rights, freedom of religion and European values. Three things that Erdogan has suddenly remembered. But look at what he's doing in his own country. He's jailing journalists, he's disappearing dissidents, many of them Muslims, and dismantling Turkish secularism. So why is he criticizing France? Not out of love for French Muslims. He saw an opportunity to one-up his rivals and he took it. But here's a question for the Turkish president. Why talk about a bill that is still being debated? Instead, why not talk about an abuse that is already underway? Which brings us to instance number two. The Uighur genocide in Xinjiang in China. We have two new reports to share with you. One is on the birth rate among Uighur Muslims. Since 2017, there's been an unprecedented drop in birth rates in Xinjiang. The sharpest decline continues to be dominated by Uighur Muslims. What does this indicate? What the world has known for a long time, that China is using forced sterilization to eliminate the Uighur population. The second report talks about Muslim preachers in Xinjiang. More than 630 of them have been detained since 2014. 630 preachers, 18 clerics died in detention or shortly after their release. Now, you would expect Erdogan to be fuming at these reports, but he couldn't care less. China is a huge trading partner of Turkey, and Erdogan wants to keep it that way. For many years, Turkey was also a safe haven for Uyghur activists, but now they're being deported. Erdogan is sending them back to Xi Jinping's labor camps. So much for being the defender of Muslims. Instance number three, the violence in Gaza. Erdogan sees an opportunity here too, a chance to hijack Islamic leadership. So what is he saying? He wants Muslim nations to send a united and clear message to Israel. He says being on the fence is the same as supporting Israel. And this has always been the plan, to peg himself as the savior of Palestine. President Erdogan of Turkey is talking about teaching Israel a stern lesson. But here's the other side of the story. Turkey recognized Israel way back in 1949. It was the first Muslim country to do so. Erdogan has rolled back most policies from that era, but not this one. So his country still recognizes Israel. In 2005, Erdogan himself visited Israel. In the last decade, bilateral trade touched $2 billion. We're not saying this is a perfect relationship, but it is a relationship nonetheless. So the next time President Erdogan calls Israel a terror state, remember that he's working to expand trade with the same quote-unquote terror state. The bottom line is this. Recep Tayyip Erdogan does not care about the Muslim community, whether in China or in Palestine or in France for that matter. Religion is just an excuse for his ambitions. If you strip away all the superficial remarks and gestures, you will find a ruthless politician, someone who praises Islam but sacrifices Muslims. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.